Welcome to Eye on the Illini. This is Mike Cagley. Recently, Martin O'Donnell stepped back from broadcasting on the Busey Bank Illini radio network, and that has provided an opening for two former Illini football captains to come in and replace him. Kerry Davis and Kevin Mitchell have stepped up. We've got a captain of the 2001 team and a captain of the 2007 team, two of the legendary Illini teams out there, and they will be sharing their experiences and helping paint that picture that you can only do on radio. If you can't make it to the games, Busey Bank Radio Network is always a very, very good bet if you want to get the best in play-by-play coverage for the Illini sports. So with that, we're going to have Kevin Mitchell on today. Kevin, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. Much appreciated, Mike.
Yeah, I tell you, this was exciting news. Obviously, Martin O'Donnell brought a passion with past experience as a Illini football player and what he had done. And now replacing him is going to be a 1-2 punch with you and Kerry Davis. Let's talk a little bit about what you did, co-captain for the 2008 Rose Bowl squad. I'm not certain, and I've been going to games since the late 70s. I'm not certain there was ever a more exciting game. There were games that were just as good, but that game when you guys went into Ohio State, being a part of Illini football at one of the peaks, what was that like?
It was amazing. I think more so, especially for myself and the folks who came in 2003, that Ron Turner class. I mean, we put in 4 years of hard work, right? I mean, I always tell people before that last year, that amazing year, we went to the Rose Bowl. We won a total of 8 games in those 4 years. And the thing is, I would love to do a study on this, but I mean, there's something about when you lose and what that does for you over time. And it's either you choose to be a loser or you choose to be a winner. And what we had to do collectively as a team is find the small victories within the losses, right? And that's what we did. And then, we had Coach Turner for those 2 years and then built it up with Ron Zook and, the additions that they made in '08 or '07 as far as adding that talent from Aurelius Ben to, Vontae Davis, RIP, and DeRay Hicks, and then folks on the D line, I mean, the offensive line. I mean, if you think about all positions, we had a good mix of young and old, which really, I mean, inspired us. But if you go back to even that '06, I mean, that we had some peaks there too. I mean, I think our win-loss record was our points was like 7 or something like that, and we still only won like 2 games.
Yeah.
But we had close one at Penn State, Wisconsin. I think we lost Ohio State. It came down to an onside kick in OT, and we lost 10-7, right? So we had a lot going in that offseason to already kind of build off that confidence. And that's what we did. And you talk about that game against Ohio State, man, like that's so memorable because, us going into that game, there was so much inner confidence throughout that week. We knew we could do it, and that's all that matters. Coach Zook, all he talks about is if the team believes, that's all that matters, and that's what we did. And if you think about it, throughout that game, I mean, the first drive, we hit adversity. I mean, they hit that long, we had miscommunication in the back end. They hit that long pass to Hartline, and then Harrison tracked them down. But they scored right away. Then we scored, and then they scored, and then we scored. And once that happens, you kind of set the tone, especially in the first, second quarter. And we let them know we weren't going to back down. And it was a dogfight. And it came down to the end, obviously, with that last drive with that famous was the 8-minute long with the timeout with Juice and everything. But if you think about it, it was all or nothing. We gave it all, and I just remember how quiet it was when the double zeros hit. I mean, and it was just a monumental moment, not for only just us as a team, but if you think about it in the Illini Nation, how huge. I remember getting back home on the tarmac. You had fans there. Students on Green Street. I mean, that was one of the victories to where it stood out because 0405, when the basketball team was rocking and rolling, I remember that Green Street being filled and just kind of thinking like, man, I want to experience something like that. And we're blessed to do so.
Yeah, that was an amazing era because I was at a convention for the AAO, the American Academy of Ophthalmology, and there were a few Illini fans that were in my room, and then there were a few people who just didn't like Ohio State.
Hmm.
And so it's a Saturday afternoon in a hotel because we weren't in the convention. We had found a way to not work the convention floor that day so we could watch college football. And we were all yelling so loud that the hotel came up expecting to see a big party. It was just a bunch of guys watching football. And it was just an incredible game. And just to give people an idea, 2003 under Ron Turner, Illinois goes 1-11. The next year they go 3-8. And then under Ron Zook, 2-9 and 2-10. And then all of a sudden, 9-4, and not only 9-4, but athletically being able to hang with Ohio State and beat them, being able to hang with USC. I mean, you take 2 turnovers in that Rose Bowl game, and a game that looks one-sided could be Illinois'.
Every folks, you look at the score. I mean, it is what it is. But I even say that about the season. If you look at the season, a couple plays here, we're in the national championship. I understand that sounds crazy. I understand that. But if you think about the Missouri game, right? And we fumbled on our one going in, they ran at 99 yards, right? I think it was Macklin ran back a punt. So
Yep.
they had a couple plays, obviously, right? So you have one touchdown there. Then Michigan, right? We fumbled, did a couple things, on
Yeah.
our end, right? It is what it is. But that one, and then what was in the Iowa? Oh, and when we covered up our own player at the
Right.
end, we scored, lost 10-6,
Yep.
right? And so all of those losses, it was less than 10, I think. It was a 7, and like a 4 or something like that. But we were that close. But at the same time, you can say that might not have fueled us to then do what we did against Ohio State and others. And that was a wild year. I saw a long time ago some clip on YouTube about how so many things had to happen for us to get to the Rose Bowl, and
Yeah.
how there was everybody like Kansas was number one at one point, right? Like there were so many ups and downs. Oklahoma, I mean, that LSU, right? And there's so many things that had to go right, and they did. And so it was just a real bonding year for us in the Illini Nation.
Illinois 2007 comes up and proves that you can go toe to toe with the heavyweights. 2001, same thing. Do you think Illinois has the potential to be a year in and year out contender in the Big Ten?
I think so. I think they have the head coach and staff to do it. I think they've done it the right way. It's kind of building that foundation. I was on the radio yesterday, and I also talked about, if you think about it, we've been a couple plays away from having a three back to back or back to back bowl games and appearances. And I don't take that lightly because of the fact that how many wins I had before we went to the Rose
Yes.
Bowl, right? But so for me, my perspective is different, right? I can see the build because I had to go through it as a player myself. And I love it because if you think about this staff, they get every ounce of each player that they can get. I mean, you think about even last year, I'm not using injuries as an excuse,
Right.
but even with the amount of injuries at positions that we were like, whoa, we were going toe to toe with teams. And so I think they're going in the right direction. They're going to continue to build it the right way. Obviously, they've also been able to plug some gaps with some transfers and different things like that. So it's going to be exciting. We got to come out the gates hot. I'm excited to see the quarterback in another year under the same system. I think that's huge because even if you go through time, there hadn't been a lot of years where we've had the same quarterback in the same system, and that's huge. I mean, you just can't come out here and just do it. Folks don't really know that concept. I think sometimes when you talk about why aren't they winning or why did they do this? Well, in order for people to win, typically it takes a few years. Case in point, we came in 03, we ended on the Rose Bowl in 08.
Yeah.
Same thing, right? We were able to have time, though, to build up that program. I mean, we had guys like Jay Lehman and myself. I remember we were in a huddle specifically. We were playing Minnesota. It was against Marion Barber and Maroney. And I remember going up there. We flew up there. They were in flats, and they got 250 apiece. And I remember looking at each other, kind of like, "Whoa!" And I remember Sinclair was the running linebacker then. And we kind of looked around, and I looked at our younger guys. I was like, "We're the future." I said, "Let's make the most of this because it's going to pay off down the road." And sure enough, you know how it is with reps. I mean, there's something about that. The game slows down. You don't have to be the fastest or the best. But if you know where you're supposed to be and you have confidence, that does a lot.
Yeah, it was funny because back there at the safety position, it seemed like you guys were in the right position all the time. And that is what you're talking about. Those years of repetitions was always one of the fun things about watching an athlete when the coaching turns into results on the field and they're no longer thinking, but they're just reacting and doing what they've practiced. And that's the same thing the military does, right?
Yep, same thing.
Yep.
I mean, think about the success of the players who have came through. I mean, man, the Brown brothers, right? I remember when
Yeah.
they first got hidden, right? Like
Yeah.
all of these players, we forget
Yeah.
when you first get here. There's only a couple players that stand out in my head that I was a part of team wise. That when they came in, they were dominant, right? You have the Kelvin Haydens, which Kelvin he
Yeah.
came in as a JUCO, right? I mean, if you talk about how his experience, I mean, Kelvin was the first person that I ever saw go both ways,
Right.
and dominated. Right, he came in as a dominant receiver, but then plays years and years in the league as a DB. Like it's stuff like that, right? Players like that. I mean, it's the Realest Ben, it's the Vontae Davises, but there's a reason why I can only name a couple, right?
Exactly.
Juice Williams, even. I mean, if you look at it, Juice, even his freshman year, right? He had struggles because he's a freshman, right? We all struggled as a freshman, right? But I mean, you have folks that like a Juice, though. You just see that progression quicker than others. But for the most part, there's a lot of folks it takes 3 or so years because also what really benefited us was having a weight and strength program like with a Lou Hernandez, right? To where, you know, not only he got us better physically, but mentally, and it allowed us to have that confidence to where it's like, just put the ball down. We don't care who we want to, who it is, we're going to run through them. And I think all of that kind of, goes together when it comes to winning.
The question that I get more from Illini fans, and it's a topic of discussion, and it has been my whole life, is why hasn't Illinois football been able to sustain? There was a brief amount of time there in the 80s that they were on the verge, 80s, early 90s. But since then, they haven't been able to sustain that. Now, you've been in the trenches, you've been at the top, and to be honest with you, you fought through some of the rougher years.
Oh, yeah.
What is your perspective on what Illinois has not done or what it needs to do to sustain that football program at a higher level?
Man, that's a great question. Oh man, we've all tried to figure that out over the years, right? Because it's like this.
Yes, exactly. Those who aren't watching us on video, if you're listening to podcasts, we're doing a roller coaster here.
Yes, the roller coaster. I mean, that's a $1 million question. I think what's happened, especially, okay, I'll speak to, because it's hard to speak to other eras. I'll speak to mine, right?
Okay.
I feel like when we got to that Rose Bowl game and obviously the things that happened with that, we didn't win. I feel like sometimes realistically, we automatically say we're going to repeat and be the same when it's like, you can't, you're not going to be that, right? If you look at our team, we lost the core of our team. I mean, we had lost those folks that were there 4 years, right? And the leaders of those teams, right? we had some up and coming like the Britt Millers of the world and everything like that, right? So don't get me wrong about that. But at the same time, I think what happens is we all of a sudden, I always tell people this. There's nothing wrong with having a model of, hey, let's be like Iowa sometimes, right? Consistently go to a bowl game, right? And then you'll pop out that 9-win season randomly, right? But you're always going to a bowl game. You're always getting at least 6 to 7 wins,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
They're good at what they do. I mean, obviously that helps because they've had the same coaching staff
Forever.
throughout. So, I mean, I think even now that doesn't exist. So, I mean, that's hard to even compare to Iowa. But as far as expectations, I just feel like the year after it was like, hey, yeah, we've made it. We're gonna go back
Yeah.
to a Rose Bowl, and I'm like, y'all, no, that's not how this works. Especially with what I knew we had. Because don't get me wrong, Coach Zook did a phenomenal job. If you think about the first rounders that then came out after all those years, like we had back years after of first rounders, right? Corey Legit, Whitney Merciless, others,
Exactly.
right? So, but there was something to be said as far as not next year is always going to be the same, right? I think expectation wise, we've always once we've had that winning year, it's like, oh yeah, we're there. Not really. We have to put together a couple, right? Because what that does, what does the bowl games to me? What they do the most is it's those extra practices that teams get. That I think it's 15, whatever that is.
Yes.
But if you can do that for 4 years straight, think about all those practices you can stack up for your young guys, which leads straight into spring ball, and it just, man, that's where I think you can the teams really build from that. Other than you go one year and then the next 5 years or whatever, it does more of the roller coaster if you can't be consistent.
Yeah, if you look at Ohio State, if you're a fifth-year senior for Ohio State, you get 3 extra weeks of practice times 5. That's 15 weeks. That's an extra season that you get. And if you're a fifth-year guy, now you're a 6-year guy, essentially. So
Right.
it does add up. My personal opinion is in college sports, in particularly the revenue sports, i.e., football, basketball, and I think this goes for women's sports the same, volleyball and basketball. I think you have to have that head coach who can be both a recruiting demon out there
Hmm.
and an X's and O's person who brings something to the table. And Illinois has not always been in a position to get those guys. For example, I'll just go to growing up. Mike White showed up and he brought that passing offense that nobody in the Big Ten knew anything about or wanted to deal with. And he was able to get the imagination of those guys in California and get the influx of talent. And between the talent and the X's and O's, and I think Makovic kind of had that. And I think Bielema's defenses are spectacular. And if you listen to kids talk, they talk about what an excellent impression he and the Illini staff make on them. And I think in today's world, you also have to add NIL, but it is what it is, right?
It is what it is.
A question for you,
Mhm.
and I've faced this same question as a guy who was one of the people who started IlliniGuys, and now we have the Sports Spectacular that's on Fridays or Saturdays, our 2-hour show across the state of Illinois on over 20 stations. People go, "You were a sales guy. What do you think you're doing broadcasting?" And I just had an idea, and I got friends who are really good, and they just carry me along. How did you decide to make this leap? Obviously, you've had a really good career there working as a varsity eye director, and now you're the director of development at the Carl Illinois College of Medicine. What made you decide to dip your toe into broadcasting?
Well, it's one of those things. I was reached out to, but my path has led me to this though too. And so, shout out to LAS and communications. That was my degree. And so I've always been able to do that piece as far as speaking. Got to kind of perfect that throughout the years with recruiting, because I first started with Mike Loxley at New Mexico.
Okay.
And the best thing about that was as a GA, I mean, this is before you have 20 different GAs, right?
Right.
We just had one offense, one defense, and one GA in the weight room, right? And we all did everything. And so because of that, though, it allowed me to see things on all ends, be involved in the playbook. You know, we went from at my time there with Coach Doug Mallory when he was there. We went and then it went to Coach Barlow. We went from a traditional 4-3 to a 4-2-5, right?
Right.
And I was in that process of, okay, how does this differ from that, right? But then what plays, how do we implement this, right? I mean, obviously it's more of a hybrid with the will linebacker and everything. You want them to do a mixture of run pass, right? So it's not a huge difference, but it's learning those from the ground level young. And so I was able to do that. And then my career took me then to North Carolina. I was in the weight and strength department. So I was able to see it from that side too, and how important that is from a day to day. But then also with the ability, was blessed to be a scout with the Houston Texans. So then even from that side, the NFL side and the scouting side, right? That's when I learned, I was like, you know what? I know I didn't make it. I wasn't the fastest at all, and I can admit that now, right? I didn't have the cover skills, and I understand that. But it's being able to see it from all different sides, and even now, I'm still able to. I work with so Jeff Foster, who runs National Football Scouting, who then they run the combine.
Yep.
That was my job right before I came to campus, so I was with them in scouting for 2 years in Indianapolis. And so I've been able to see it from so many different sides to where then when this opportunity came up, I was telling somebody the other day, like, I hesitated for a quick second, but it's just the same like we all do when it's something new. You have that kind of split second of doubt and that fear of, oh my gosh, it's new. But that was the same thing that happened when I first lined up in a tackling drill as well. Right. And so you just have to go in it. You have that confidence, you build that confidence over time, and you end up being a winner. And that's what I plan on doing.
The game has changed a ton, and yet because of where your career has taken you, you've got to watch the game evolve because you really haven't left it, right?
And then in different aspects, right? I've just now seen it from all sides because even here, when I came back 6 years ago in fundraising and then Varsity I, right? I still was around, right? I didn't.
Exactly.
Now, this is the thing when people ask me, what do you think about this? You know, respectfully, if I hadn't watched three games on them, I can't answer that. And I don't know if that's a cop out, but it's still the truth, right? And so I hadn't been able to watch it from an X's and O's standpoint. But at the same time, I mean, how many different versions of cover two are there or cover three, right? Or I think, yeah, the game has changed as far as how we kind of play the different rule, the nuances, right? I feel like myself and Justin Harrison, we'd have a hard time now with the 15. We'd probably get a lot of 15 yarders, right? We'd have to
Yeah,
adjust.
exactly.
So there's ways like that it's changed, but at the same time, the technique, right, of offensive line and linebackers, that hasn't changed the technique, right? Well, you know, you still have to button press and shed to get off of a block, right? You still have to be tenacious when you're running down on kickoff, right? It was funny. Yesterday, I talked about how my role, my first year, freshman year, is literally I was on kickoff team and I was there to split a wedge,
Yes.
which is crazy to even talk about because no one talks about splitting wedges anymore. Like that's your solo job. Just run down there, split the wedge, and let everything else happen, right? Which I was also saying how you got to be a little something up here to do that and want to do that, but that was the game. So some of it has changed, but the fact that you still got to be a dog, you still got to go out and handle your position and take care of your assignment as a teammate, taking care of your job hasn't changed.
Let's talk a little bit about the Carle, Illinois College of Medicine. The reason I wanted to talk about this, it intrigues me as a former VP and sales director at a pharmaceutical company. My reps, we spent so much time up in Chicago at the medical schools up there trying to get people to be thought leaders and use medicines first and therapies first. What does this mean for Champaign Urbana to have a medical school right there, because I think this is a big deal that I don't think it gets talked about enough.
I'm with you. Well, 5 years in, right? And so the vision has been a tremendous and innovative. Which that's one of our deals, just being innovative, right? So it started, and then COVID kind of hit, which I think that did, that hit
Yeah,
everybody as far as
right.
that. So it's one of those things for me. We are the first engineering based college of medicine in the world. So that alone is amazing. So they didn't have to convince me with that, right? Because I love being a part of the first, right? But we also, it's one of those things too. We now only have three graduating classes. So when it comes to funding, you're not going directly to your alums, you're going to everybody. And the reason being you're going to everybody, just like who's not affected by college or by medicine in a good or bad way. It affects us all on a daily, and we can all relate to it in some way. And now to have one on our campus, I mean, we are building amazing things to the students, and the difference with our med students as well is that engineering piece, to where when they go in an operating room or face situations, they think of how can we make this better, right? And so the engineer mindset mixed with the doctor mindset, we're one of the first, and now we have a lot of schools that are trying to do the same thing. But when I went on this interview, and we have things like the STEM Center, to where we have these mannequins that, you know, react like the human body when you inject them. And then we have one that gives birth. And we have all this technology, the VR that we're utilizing. I put on a headset, I'm in a operating table, and the way we just utilize technology and the projects that we do. I mean, there's so many amazing things that are being developed right on our campus. It was a no-brainer for me to join.
That's just so innovative. Now, how many students are they planning to have there as part of the medical school?
So, like for instance, like this year, our class was 64, right?
Wow.
And so right now we have a total of 96. I don't know if I said that earlier, but a total of 96 alums. But I mean, what's been great for us is, I mean, now we're having our students being chose for residency from the Dukes, the Stanfords, right? John Hodgson, and all of those folks are choosing our students, which is amazing. And that's what we want, right? We want folks to be chosen from us. I mean, we're doing so many great things right here in Champaign, Urbana. It's like, why not? I mean, and so to get in at the ground level of something like this, it's phenomenal, and it's going to be a challenge. But I mean, it was also a challenge when I came here when we won one game that first year in '03
Yeah, I don't think
versus
anybody was.
Illinois State.
Yeah,
You know,
nobody was predicting a Rose Bowl,
yeah,
and
nah,
I I will say the economic impact for Central Illinois to have a medical school down there has got to be amazing as well. To me, this is an idea that should have been done years ago, and now I know there's a lot of stuff going on at the university that people never hear about.
right.
That not only has a big effect on the community from an economic standpoint, but you might be fortunate enough to have your life saved by one of these individuals down the line. You'll be really thankful.
Oh yeah, I mean, now meeting with our professors and surgeons, different things like that. Obviously, we have that partnership with Carl. But I was able to meet with Claudius Conrad, and I was talking to him the other day because he brought up a good point, because we're now raising money for this technology, to where um, for surgeons before they go into the surgery, to where they have some type of like 3D print, but then turning that into some type of like digital image, to where they can then perform that surgery days before in
Wow.
practice, right? And he made a great point. It's like, we're playing Michigan on Saturday, right? And so starting that Sunday all week, I'm practicing those same plays, right? To where it's muscle memory, and I'm just reacting, just like you said earlier. I'm just reacting on Saturday. It's the same concept with surgery, but now it's more important because this is life or death.
Exactly.
So we have to start thinking like that, right? To where if we can connect with donors and just folks who want to support things to make change in the world, we're doing this right here, and it just makes sense. But we got to continue to get the word out. I feel like that's one of the reasons why Jessica Breitbarth, who's my boss, so shout out to her. She saw that in me to where I could be able to. She felt like I could, carry this message and get folks involved, and so that's what I'm gonna do. We're gonna continue to get this thing off the ground, and I'm so excited because we're making change right here in Champaign, and everybody is going to know about that.
That's fantastic. And of course, for sales reps, we would practice your presentations in the car, and people would wonder, like, is he talking to himself? But by the time I got in front of a doctor, I'd already practiced it 15 times that morning. And you're doing the 16th time, you're a lot better than you were the first. I do think the Carl Illinois College of Medicine is a big deal. And I think
Oh yeah.
that is a great springboard. One final question for you.
Yes.
What are your expectations for the football team this year?
Well, I mean, we always expect a bowl game, right? I think there was years in the past where you said it and you just, that's what you're supposed to say. But that's not the case with this team. It hadn't been the case with this staff. They've shown they could be winners. I think it's one of those things you expect a bowl, but it's also how do we shake out and how does everything play together, right? Whether it's the transfers, whether it's injuries, how do we adapt to injuries? How does the quarterback come out and play, right? I'm so excited about, like the running back situation, right? We
Yes,
have so many pieces that if if now year three, because we have 3 years under our belt, we come down and stop that drive at Wisconsin, right?
exactly.
Right. And so it's little things like that because of maturity that I think we'll be able to handle when it comes down to those 2 minute and 4 minute situations that comes with age. And so I won't be surprised if I see an 8 win, right? Because especially once you get momentum rolling in those first few games, sky's the limit. Because every year you have someone like a Kansas, out of nowhere, right? Or Illinois back in '07 out of nowhere, right? When we already believed it going into the season. So
Exactly.
it's one of those things. I think we have pieces that play to at least if we get rolling, expect 8. I mean, that's if we get rolling, because you never know once it goes what's going to happen at the end of the year. I mean, shoot, imagine us going into Oregon 5 under our belt, 6 under our belt. So I think it's one of those things we got to take it 1 week at a time. We got to believe, but I think Coach B and staff have really prepared this team to get these victories.
That's what we're hopeful for. I do think this staff is underrated by a lot of folks, but you go out and play, and it's the toughest Big Ten ever. Even though Big Ten is 18, we don't even want to get into that. Um, Kevin, we really appreciate you coming on. Appreciate your time here, and of course, we are great friends of Brian Barnhart and everybody over at Learfield. So we know that you'll be in fantastic hands as you jump into this newest aspect of your career.
Thank you. Thank you. Please let me know if I can ever help. And like I said, I appreciate you all thinking about me, having me on today. And yes, let me know if you need anything.
Thank you so much for listening to the show today. Thank you to Kevin Mitchell for taking time out of a busy day to talk with us. Of course, if you want to be a member of IlliniGuys.com, go to IlliniGuys.com and go ahead and register. You get your 7-day free trial and then $99 a year, and you get all the inside information, all the full stories. It's a great place to go, and the community that is created of Illini fans, particularly the communication on the message boards where people can interact with one another. They can argue about how good the football team's going to do this year, see who can predict it the best. And you can ask questions of Brad Sturdy, Kedrick Prince, Matt Stevens, Larry Smith, or myself. It's a great place to build community. It's a great place to have fun. IlliniGuys.com. Of course, we have our Sports Spectacular, our weekly 2-hour Illini-centric show that's on 20 stations across the state of Illinois. Please go ahead to IlliniGuys.com, hit the radio button, and you can find the city, the day they have it on, and the time to tune in. Of course, we also have our podcast. The Illini Sports Spectacular is released as a podcast. Eye on the Illini that you're listening to or watching right now. We also have Sturdy for 30, Ked's Recruiting Roundup, and my own Heat Checks and Hail Marys. So if you're looking for something that is not going to be negative and kind of enjoy your day as you're driving or you're listening or you're watching, we'd like to think we provide some alternatives for you that are positive. And when you turn it off, you'll actually be in a good mood. So please give us that opportunity as well. Until next time, folks, go Illini.